Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to today's event all about replacing Management Reporter and FRX. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com. I'm pleased to welcome everyone to today's event. Our speaker today is Nils Rasmussen. It's great to have him back for another webcast. As we get going today, just a couple of notes. First, I do want to encourage everyone to ask questions during today's presentation. I know Nils will be making time at the end to answer any of those that come in. And we also have a brief poll to run right now, which I'm going to open up. If you could just take a moment to give a little bit of feedback there, that'll just give us a little better sense of who you are in the audience and your interests to sort of better tailor, so Nils can better tailor his presentation. So that should be up and visible now. So without any further delay, I am going to hand things off to Nils to get us started. Nils, I'm just going to make sure your line's open.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks to Dynamics Communities for organizing this webinar. So my name is Nils, and the next 50 minutes or so, we're going to talk about financial reporting and where financial reporting may be going, both now and in the future from platform technology standpoints. And we'll talk about how you could potentially replace what you're doing in Management Reporter, or if you're still on FRX, certainly how we can replace that, and how Microsoft Excel with modern Excel add-ins might be one of the options that you want to explore, whether you're looking to do it in the cloud or on-premise or a hybrid. So we'll try to talk about all of those topics today. So what I plan to do is first give you a quick snapshot of Solver in case you haven't heard about us before, and our BI360 reporting and budgeting product. And then we'll do a demonstration, and I'll show you what that looks like, how you write reports, how you run reports and such. And then we will wrap up and do a Q&A, like Jason said, and hopefully have some good conversation. So as we start here, we now have results from the survey. So I will read those up so we can get a little flavor of what everyone's thinking about these days. So in terms of potentially moving ERP to the cloud, we had 15% saying that they're thinking about doing that in the next 6 months, 19% in the next year, so I guess that becomes the next 12 months or so. So that means that's 34% in total. That's looking at the next year. In the next 2 years, it's another 15%, so that takes us to about 46%. And not at this time is the rest. So about half of everyone that's on don't have any plans the next couple of years of moving to the cloud, planning to stay on-premise or, I guess, a private host. And the rest are definitely having that in their mind. The second question was, do you currently collect your business data in the data warehouse? And 46% are saying yes, and 50% no. And I guess the missing percentages here are simply people that involved. And the third question was, which financial report writer are you using today? It's always interesting to ask. So 77% said Management Reporter. But that, of course, makes sense based on the topic of the presentation today. 19% are still using FRX, so that's a little bit surprising, just because it hasn't been supported for a while. Of course, I do know a lot of people have things they really liked in FRX that's not working the same way in Management Reporter, so I do understand. And then 31% said they're also using other reporting tools. So interesting. So now switching back to the presentation here, a quick snapshot of Solver. So we are headquartered in Los Angeles. That's where I am today. And we have offices in 11 other international markets. We have customers in more than 40 countries. We've been growing very fast the last 8 years since we launched the BI360 reporting and budgeting product, and we work very closely with the same partner channel that most of you work with for your Dynamics ERP system. So BI360, what does it do, and what's sort of the premise for the platform and how we envision report writing take place both today and in the future? So we really believe in Excel being an ideal design interface, and I'm trying to be very clear when I say design interface, because as far as deploying reports to users, Excel sometimes is preferable, but a lot of times not, because end users running their own reports or viewing reports typically want to do that from whatever location they're in, and then Excel and Excel files is typically not ideal. It's normally a web portal, a few times maybe a mobile app, even though financial reports aren't really ideal for small mobile phones. So typically a web portal is ideal to share reports with end users, and that's how we built BI360. You design the reports in Excel with the modern Excel add-in, and then if you do have a lot of end users, we have a very modern web portal which allows you to share the reports self-service with your end users. And we also have email options we'll talk about, so you can also automatically distribute reports if you don't want to have end users needing licenses for the product or having to do anything. So then the reports just arrive in their inbox. Our goal with BI360 is to give you world-class reporting, and that's something we've always worked with since we started our company 20 and a half years ago. But it's also to allow you to automate your budgeting process. So that's an optional but very important module in BI360. And also allow you to do analysis, so graphing and charting beyond just the simple type of charts you could have through an Excel-based reports. Yeah, and finally, it's been an objective for us to minimize the need for you to work with your IT department to manage reporting and budgeting as an administrator. The idea is that should be able to be handled by the finance and accounting department, which are most of you that are on today. So in the big picture of things, our goal is really to go beyond general ledger financial statements, because analysis and key performance indicators and such go so far beyond the general ledger. Even though the general ledger contains some of the biggest gold nuggets of information in the company, of course, there's also a lot of important information hidden in sales data or inventory data or project data and so on. So BI360's report writer has been built to be just as good for financial statements as it has been built to also be a sub-ledger report writer or used for operational reporting, so that you don't need to sit and compile financial data with operational data manually in spreadsheets and PowerPoints and so on for your leadership. And we've built a very nice data warehouse, or data mart, if you want to call it that can combine your data into a single Microsoft SQL database for truly reporting across all of your data sources that have important data in it. And of course, the overall objective is that you can be the person on the right side of this picture, the person that have more time available for true analysis and execution as compared to manual administrative tasks. So the BI360 product has been built with 4 main modules, and you certainly can grow into it or only use one module if you want to do that. The focus of today is the reporting. So if you look on the top left corner, that is symbolizing the report writer in BI360. Design with our Excel add-in, so you can do anything that Excel allows you to do with formatting formulas and so on, but you can deploy through our web portal if you have a lot of end users. So that's very, very normal today. Then there's the budgeting module, also using our Excel add-in to design now budget and forecast input forms, and the same thing, they can be deployed to your end users for data entry of budgets through our web portal. We have an optional dashboard module as well, and then we have the data warehouse where you can bring together not just your financial data from your Dynamics ERP system, but also data from any other data source of importance. About half of you said you already have a data warehouse. In that case, your data warehouse might be one of these other data sources that I symbolize in the lower right corner here. And BI360 can be more of a management data mart, so a subset of what's important for reporting. So it supports different configurations. One thing that is often very important to accountants is this dotted line that you see from the reporting, and that goes from the reporting module and straight into your Dynamics ERP system. So we can report live directly on your ERP system. You don't have to move the data out like some CPM or corporate performance management and business intelligence tools require you to do. Here you have both options, live reporting, but you can also report through our data warehouse. I should mention right now, because more than a third of you are planning to move your ERP to the cloud in the next year, that we launched the cloud version of BI360 2 months ago. It's running in the Microsoft Azure cloud. So what you can do is you can start with BI360 today on-premise, and then you can move BI360 up to the cloud and use it there once you move your ERP system to the cloud. Or if you're already in the cloud with your ERP system, you can go directly to BI360 Cloud. So it's quite interesting now that regardless of whether you want cloud or on-premise, you have the option to use BI360. So a couple of more things before we go in and look at the software. Like I said earlier, Excel has been very important to us. And actually, when we 2 months ago launched the cloud version of BI360, well, actually, I should say 2 years ago when we started working on the development for the cloud version, we again revisited our Excel add-in for report design and question ourselves if Excel is also or can also be the right technology to design reports when all of your data is in the cloud. And from all of our surveys, we clearly heard from finance and accounting and business users that that's the interface they are familiar with and where they like to design reports and budget templates. So what we did is we then connected Excel to the cloud. So in the cloud world, you still work with the same report writer, but it's getting all this data from the cloud and it's publishing the finished report templates to the cloud. So we were able to keep the same interface in the cloud architecture. Quite interesting. One of the important things, if you do live reporting with BI360 directly on Dynamics, is that the SQL fields that you're used to seeing in, let's say, SQL reporting services or tools that sit straight on the Dynamics SQL tables in our world are protected or hidden, if you will, and there's a user-friendly name on top of every field. So, a vendor ID, for example, can actually be called vendor ID and not some cryptic SQL table name. So that's very important. We have this metadata layer that has friendly names on tables and fields, and you'll see that in a little bit. And you can also include custom tables or third-party tables in our integration. When it comes to the web interface, as soon as you're more than a couple of users in the accounting department and you have a bunch of end users, it's very nice that they can log in from anywhere they want in the world through the browser without needing terminal server or VPN or any of those type of add-on technologies. and it's one single place, whether you only use the product for reporting or you also decide to add on budgeting or dashboards. So with that said, let's go in and look at the product here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the end user, and I'm going to log into our web portal first. And with that, we can then see how the end user could interact with reports from a portal standpoint. So with this, like we said earlier, you just need an internet connection. Right now you're looking here at our demonstration portal, and the first thing you saw when we came into the portal is it went straight to what we call favorites. If you see here, that's marked in green. That means I've set it up to go straight to my favorite reports or budget forms or dashboards, and they're what you're seeing on the screen right here. So those were some dashboards. Here you see some reports, and that's totally easy to set up because you just click this little green star as a user, and that's how you make a favorite. Why have favorites? Well, if you have an enormous amount of reports, it makes it very quick to find those 3, 4, 5, 6 reports that you use all the time. You can also organize reports and budget templates in folders. You see that here on the left. And they can be coming in many, many flavors. For example, here at Solver, we even capture our strategies and strategic goals and initiatives in input forms. So we actually have a place after our strategy meeting to enter those goals so that they're stored in the database. They're not just sitting in Word documents or PowerPoints. We do our forecasting here. So here you can see some forecast forms. The annual budget. So here you see examples of full-blown set of detailed input forms for annual budgeting, for travel, payroll, capital budgeting, and so on and so on. And we have workflow for that. And then here we can see a lot of reports and dashboards for example, monthly reporting and analysis. And down here at the bottom, you see an example of a folder that has everything needed for a complex or a simple monthly consolidation process. So if you have many companies, which typically a good number of you have, then this has examples of intercompany reports, consolidation reports, audit reports. If you're a multinational, IFRS to GAAP adjustments, and so on. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how the world can look through the eyes of the BI360 web portal with all kinds of reports and possibly also budgets for forecasts sitting within the tool and maybe even dashboards. Today, of course, the focus is on financial reporting and how you can potentially replace FRX and Management Reporter. So we're going to focus in on that in the whole presentation. So I just want to give you an idea of what reporting and analysis can look like, because it's very easy from an accounting perspective to get stuck in the track of simply producing financial statements at month end, because that still is the process of many companies, and often that is the only reporting analysis that is provided to executives as compared to a richer self-service environment. And I'll give you an idea right here. So imagine you have your managers self-servicing here in the web portal as soon as you have closed the books at month end, or even during the month if they're looking at other data than your general ledger data. And you can imagine them, for example, looking at a dashboard like this. And a dashboard, of course, is different than the FRX or Management Reported financial statement, because it's all graphical and it's interactive. Now you may already be using a third-party dashboard like Power BI or Tableau, and we actually support those third-party dashboards, and they can pull data from BI360's database, and that's totally okay too. But we do have built-in dashboards here, and here we can look at revenues for my 4 subsidiaries. And if I click on, let's say, the corporate US one, you can see it drilled down to the individual revenue accounts here, and the other charts updated because now you're looking at receivables, payables, and so on, specifically for the company that I drilled down into. I can drill up again and into another one. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because this is not financial reporting in FRX and MR replacement. It's a dashboard, but it is important because what I'm trying to highlight is that the analysis can be a lot richer than a set of financial statements. So personally, and we use Dynamics as our ERP system here at Solver, I spend probably half my time in dashboards and half my time in financial statements and operational reports. And I like to get the big pictures through dashboards and do trend analysis and so on. So let's say we looked at, for the U.S. company, revenues here, and we glanced at the other areas. And now we need to see for our revenues, and see these are revenue accounts, actual versus budget and variances in percent and so on. And that is clearly best viewed in the financial statement format compared to a dashboard when you start doing variance analysis. So we move from here into financial statement. And this is the cool thing when you have a complete BI suite, is you're now not logging into completely different software. For example, going from a dashboard tool into Management Report or FRX, you're just staying here in the portal. And I just move down to the bottom of the screen where I have my favorite setup, and I can come right into my financial statement. And using the parameters on top of the screen, we could go back and forth between the companies or departments that we have access to. So these are just typical filters. And we can go back and forth between any year and month because we can just change the filter there. And then once we've run it, we go full screen. And we are now looking at the corporate US subsidiary that we just analyzed in the dashboard. And we see the 4 different revenue accounts that we saw in the dashboard. And we see things dashboards don't do very well, namely comparing sets of numbers with variance analysis and percent variances and actual budget this year, last year, and so on. We can see that very clearly here. Do our analysis, and let's say we're looking at product revenue here, and we want to get a little bit deeper into the number for the actual year-to-date current year here. So we can right-click on the $9 million, and then we can drill down. Now, in BI360, the drill down can be, of course, straight down to the underlying general ledger data, both the journal entry level and the GL summary. Let's do GL summary in this case. But it can also be set up to drill across to sub-ledger data, such as into sales order processing or accounts payable. So we have a drill across feature you can set up when you build the report to, eliminating the need to hop between what probably for you today is Management Reporter, the native Dynamics report writer in GP or SL or AX or NAV, maybe SSRS, maybe a smart list. Most people have 2, 3 report writers just to get the data together from Dynamics, and here you can do it all from one place. Now, in this particular case, I did my drill down, but I actually want to see this product revenue data at a much deeper level, the level that is posted in my sales order processing module, so in wherever you post your sales orders. So I'm going to come to the bottom of my screen again, and right here we can see we have a sales report. So we're going to open that sales report. Again, running for this subsidiary, SUS. You can go full screen on that. And now we're watching our data, or looking at it by customer, document date, by product. So you see the customers, the products. I can see the salesperson, quantity rate. However you decide to design, a user-friendly sales report. I even have some charts at the top to help me with some analysis at this level. And because all of these reports, the financial statements, the sub-ledger reports, are created with the BI360 Excel add-in, which you're going to see in a little bit, where you'd actually do the design. You have a lot of flexibility to have very user-friendly layouts. And because they're all built with the same report writer, they can all exist here in the web portal with the same security, same login, and so on. Now, just to take this one step further, what about the sales that we're now looking at the very detailed level? What if we're saying, well, I understand how sales looks for the year to date, as we saw in the P&L and the month, and now looking at the very detailed sales for the month. And if I discover a certain important trend there, maybe I'm thinking, I wonder if that big Google Ads campaign has affected my sales. And how can I know that? Well, that important statistical data of how many Google Ads you ran and the impact and so on. For most people, that's sitting in a website tracking software like Google Analytics, which, by the way, has data that can be exported and sent into BI360. So maybe at the lowest level, I'm sort of leaving the financial world, and I'm coming over here to a report also built in BI360, but that's looking at website statistics data. If I scroll a little bit over to the right here, even looking at something very interesting like number of visitors to our website and my marketing expense. Of course, that I'm getting out of the general ledger data. So that's something that an FRX or management reporter would normally be showing. But here in BI360, I'm also showing the web statistics, and with the simple formula, dividing the marketing with the web statistics, I can actually see here cost per web visit. We can see certain months it's very high and low and so on. And I can even click over on the second tab because BI360 allows you to still build reports on the multiple tabs in Excel. So if you design the report that way, then that's the same way it behaves when you're in the web browser here, that it still mimics Excel's multi-tab world. But again, you're in the browser. And here we can look at the top referrers and so on. So just as an example, I moved through these reports to show you flow going from a dashboard where we did some trend analysis and comparisons into a P&L report where we saw variance analysis and search on particularly we looked at the revenue side, and then we went down into a sales report and we saw the very detail of that, and then we looked at how website statistics might have been impacting those sales. Now we might come back in our analysis to the P&L, and maybe we're scrolling down a little bit, and we're in the expense part of the P&L here, and we're doing some analysis of major expense variances. For example, on conferences and seminars, looks like we have quite a variance from budget. So on expenditures, certainly if you're running these reports by department too, people might then question, well, I wonder which particular expenses ended up in the general ledger that causes this variance. And typically that's best explained by going to an accounts payable report. So we can scoot across here at the bottom again, come into an accounts payable report, again built with BI360, and using a little expand collapse option here on the left, we can go into each individual vendor where we see large expenses, for example, and we can see exactly the document ID and document date, and you could even right click and drill down here to see all of the fields on that payables transaction. So what I've just shown you, if you think about it, wasn't just that this is a place to build the same financial statements you have in FRX and Management Reporter, but it's a whole other experience in self-service. You're coming through the web as an end user, and most importantly, without logging in and out of 2 or 3 report writers and the dashboard tool, being able to maneuver back and forth from graphical analysis to financial statements to sub-ledger reports, including reports that are coming from completely other data sources than Dynamics. So hopefully that can give you some ideas of some of the possibilities here. So with that said, you probably wonder, how do you actually build reports in the system? Because these were just examples of reports that I had already built. So let's bring down our browser here. I'm going to show you 3 things. Most importantly, how you build reports in Excel. So we're going to come into Excel here. And then I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes showing you how you can automatically do report distribution. If you don't want everyone to serve themselves in the web portal, you might just want to push the reports out automatically. So I'll show that very briefly, and I'll also show a really, really cool ad hoc reporting option in the report writer, where you can just pivot yourself to a report in seconds when you're not looking to build a nice formatted report. So you will have both options here. Pretty formatted reports versus quick ad hoc reports to just answer a question on the fly. So let's start with making a nice formatted report. So here you see Microsoft Excel, and if you've ever worked with an Excel add-in before, then you know that modern Excel add-ins are simply installed in your Excel menu, and they are a ribbon in that menu. So if you want to build a brand new report as compared to, let's say, copying an existing one, changing it, saving it to a new name, well then you say new blank. So now we're building a brand new report. Now this is a good place to repeat the fact that BI360 can report live on GP, AX, NAV, SL. So all of the 4 Microsoft ERP systems are supported. In the cloud, I haven't really mentioned that, but we also, in the cloud world, support Dynamics 365, both the Business Edition and the Enterprise Edition, which are technically based on NAV and AX, respectively. So those you can connect to your on-premise ERPs with BI360 for live reporting. And then you have the BI360 Data Warehouse, which is ideal when you do budgeting, because that's where we can store detailed budgets and collecting many data sources, like we talked about earlier, or for advanced consolidation. So you can go live or go through the Data Warehouse. Either way, it's the same report writer. So right now we're going to connect to the Data Warehouse, and on the left side of the screen, you see all of the modules that I've put data into in the BI360 Data Warehouse, and these are just examples, and you can name these modules whatever you want. They're basically different data sets. When I show you the ad hoc reporting in a little bit, I'll actually connect directly to one of the Dynamics ERPs, and then you'll see the left side will show exactly the modules in the Dynamics ERP. So it understands, based on what you're connecting to, what's sitting underneath. So let's build a quick report here. So if you have never used an Excel add-in for financial reporting, you will probably be very pleasantly surprised. Exactly because it's Excel, it means you have minimal learning to do when it comes to just calculations and standard formatting. And that's exactly what we see right here, is I'm using my standard Excel skills to lay out the report. Like that. All right, so now we're going to start pulling data. So we come over on the left side, and this is where, if you have worked with other Excel add-ins, you'll start to see a big difference between the older Excel add-ins, where you're typing in a lot more formulas and you don't have very dynamic rows and columns, versus what you have here. And you're going to see that as we go along now. So we're going to stick with the general ledger data. So we're sitting in that module, and here we would see all of the dimensions or segments that you have in your general ledger, plus some other dimensions like time and so on. Okay, and then we have the amount fields here at the bottom. So all we need to do is drag in the account number, specify that we want them on the rows, do lookup, we see your chart of accounts. Now if this was a balance sheet, for example, you might do something like this to pick the first set of accounts going into the top of your balance sheet in an asset section. But because we're doing a simple trial balance, we're going to pick the entire range of accounts. And that's a major difference to FRX and Management Reporter, is that we can do dynamic ranges that will automatically create all your rows, which means also any new account you create in Dynamics that is in this range will automatically update the report and insert itself as a new row. That's a huge thing because it makes it faster to build the report and much less chances that you will ever forget the new account number because it will show up itself as long as it's within the range. There's many other ways to express what we just did. I can say all accounts beginning with 4, for example. I can even come and drag in a different field than account number, such as your account category, and then I can make my whole filter on that. And I can also combine, let's say, account number and department if you have a very picky report by dragging that in. And I'm not going to do that now, but you just see I can just drag that in. All right, so we got the account number. Now we want some of the attributes like the account description. So we just drag that onto Excel. And then we want the amount field. So we drag that in. And then what about our columns? So in FRX and Management Reporter, at this point, you would switch from your row table screen to your column table screen. You're in the proprietary world versus here you're in an Excel world, and you don't need to switch to anything. You're just staying here in Excel. And if you want something to do with time across your columns, then you would come to the period functions. Of course, you could also put departments across or companies across. You have all kinds of layout flexibilities, but in this example, we'll pick year to date. So we drag that onto the screen. I don't need to type in the formula. It does that automatically behind the scenes. And then we'll make a variance column. Another difference to FRX and Management Reporter is that you have all Excel formulas available. It's not something that kind of looks like an Excel formula and you're missing hundreds of Excel formulas. It is everything that Excel provides. Of course, this is very simple. Just one cell minus another in this particular case. And then we're going to make a total here, like that. Use a little bit of Excel magic to make that look good. Either type in an Excel sum or right-click, and BI360 figures it out for you as well. That's an option. A little bit of Excel formatting. And let's test run that report. So we switch to the Run tab. Immediately, it also built the prompt automatically because it saw that we used year-to-date formula. So it says, well, somebody has to tell the system which month you want to run for, so it created the prompt for you. Older Excel add-ins typically require you to create a filter out there in Excel, like in a cell, a drop-down, and then pull that from the periods from the database and so on. Here it's automatically handled on the left side. Another reason that's very important is as soon as we publish this report up to the web browser, if you want to use the web browser, and I showed you that in the beginning of the demo, then of course it wouldn't be very pretty to have drop-down lists in the middle of the screen like coming from Excel. And if you remember in the web browser, actually we'll go back there for a second, when we were in the report here, the period filter, which is what I was showing you in Excel right now, appeared here on the top, together with any other filter like company and choose budget version and so on. So that happens automatically as compared to sitting, let's say, inside of the report with the drop-down here. So, that's one of the many reasons that the architecture here is both working great for publishing the reports to the web and also for making it very fast and easy and clean to build Excel reports. So let's run that report. And you can see we already there have our trial balance. Just like we did on the web, that report allows you to drill down, You can even drill to a pivot table. You see that's an option here. So you see the different drill down transactions in the pivot table. Totally up to you. So very quickly you see you're connected to a database here. I should repeat another difference to FRX and Management Reporter, apart from what we mentioned that it dynamically generated all these rows based on the formula, is that you have those, the drill to pivot table, for example, and you have now the special formatting. And in a little bit, you'll see a little bit more. So let's add another filter here. Let's say here, we're going to choose company, in case you have many companies or many departments. We want that to be a global filter. FRX and Management Reporter, again, you would switch screen to where you put your report parameters. Here, you're staying in the same place. You simply come back to your dimensions. It's my company dimension. I just drag that in. And I can choose what type of drop-down box. In this case, I want to use a tree. So if you do use the BI360 data warehouse as your key reporting database, you have the ability to also build hierarchies. So if you have more complex rollups, that gives you these awesome trees. So I'm showing you that. And this button is very powerful. It says create sheet per value. What that does is something that most older Excel add-ins have a problem with, is automatically generating the reports across tabs in Excel, so sort of replicating itself. You'll see what I mean in a second. So let's first put the company parameter that we just designed up there in the header so we can easily see what we are running for. And let's get rid of one more decimal here, like that. All right, so let's now go and run the report again. Notice now it's looking down at the tree that I have built, so that's a hierarchy. And I'm going to go and run that report for one of my subsidiaries, the US Corp there. That looks good. It came up, and there's the US Corp. It even labeled the tab down there at the bottom. Let's now do a little roll-up for Western Hemisphere. So if you agree with me, it should then run, of course, the report, show it consolidated at that level. But because I click that little button in the wizard where it said create sheet per value, it will actually also generate the report for each of these three entities. A little side note, you see here it says potential acquisition. That's actually because in my data warehouse, in my demo model, I set up a new company that I don't own yet, but I plan to acquire. And let's say I got pro forma data from them that I've entered directly in the warehouse, because that wouldn't exist in your accounting system. And I'm able to do pro forma consolidation. So that's just a little side note, because I happen to have that in my tree. So you can use these trees in the data warehouse also to handle consolidations or pro forma consolidations. Anyway, we're running this consolidated now, and we got our report there at the parent level or division level. But notice it also ran that report for US Corp, as we see there, and Canada Corp, as we see there, and even the potential acquisition. So you get exactly what the reporting tree, which is very popular, maybe that's the most popular feature in FRX and Management Reporter, does. And it does so dynamically live in Excel, not an export to Excel like most people do from FRX and MR, and then they tweak and format and so on. So, if that's very important to operate with multiple tabs in Excel that are dynamically generated, that is actually supported. And that works the same way. If I now publish this report definition, which is sitting here up to the web portal, it will run exactly the same way. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of report design. Now, reports could be very, very fancy. This is a very simple one. So while we're at it, let me close out of here for a second and come in here and just show you a quite fancy report. So this report was also built with BI360. A little bit of an eye-opener, right? Because if you're used to just financial statements coming out of FRX and MR, then I talked about a few things today that a more modern tool can do, like combining dashboards with financials, with sub-ledger reports and other data, all in the same place, using Excel for your design so you have more power. And here you can actually see an auto-generated narrative. So this narrative was not written by a human being. It was written by the report writer based on formulas that are producing adjectives like great, based on a threshold. For example, if net income year-to-date versus last year year-to-date is over or under a certain percent, it will automatically generate the adjective and so on. So all of this was auto-generated, and it wasn't only looking at GL data, but also, top customers, top products, payments, the largest payments we made out of accounts payable and the largest outstanding receivables. Whatever you think is hot news could be a cover page, all formula driven, so nobody has to maintain it once it's built. Next, why only look at financial statements? Here, this is not a dashboard per se. It wasn't built with our dashboard tool. It was really built with the report writer and using Excel functionality, as you can see. These are actually Excel charting that dynamically updates when you run this report job based on the numbers. Maybe you like a lot of numbers. Here's a rolling 13-month, so rolling 13-month KPI reports. On the left, you see different key performance indicators. A P&L, so a nice-looking P&L. One of the features that you can use when you build reports is, expand, collapse rows, like you see here. That's actually a feature we get sort of for free by being an Excel add-in. So it makes financial statements much more compact, and people can explode up rows and columns as they need to. And cash flow statement, balance sheet, a very graphical report just analyzing my revenues. Same thing for my expenses. Maybe some key sub-ledger reports. We talked about it earlier, but now you see it all sitting in a report package, something that can be emailed to people as well. Sales report, payables report. And that gives you an idea of about 8 or 9 reports sitting together in a report package. That might be the month-end package going to your executives. The only thing you need to do once you've created a report package like this is either nothing if you use our report publisher to automatically run and email it, or click the run button and you're running it, and everything generates itself on these tabs. So just gives you a little bit of an idea. Now, that's a great segue into talking about report scheduling and distribution, because not always is self-service through a web portal what you want. Either you don't want to buy user licenses for people to do self-service, or you don't think they're going to use it, so maybe you just need to push it into their inbox. So that's when the report publisher is good. Here you can see I've set up 3 different jobs. My sales reports, we actually use this a lot internally. On a weekly basis, we have sales reports run by the system and automatically being emailed to our sales team. So nobody has to remember to run them. Monthly reports and so on. So if you open the sales report job, you can see there's an accounts receivable and a sales order processing report in there. This is actually will be the header of the email going to people, and that will be in the body of the email. And here you can choose the format. Most people like that it stays in an Excel format because it's more conducive to analysis. If they want to, do some analysis on the side of the report, for example, Excel is awesome for that. But you could also have it sent in PDF in a different format. Most people like to have it emailed. It also could go to like a SharePoint site or out to, report file library on your server, for example, or the printer. And then you can also schedule it to when you want to run it. I won't go into the advanced option here, but that goes down to the minute, and you can say accept holidays and all types of things. So truly any report that is a routine, is not some sort of ad hoc or self-service process, can be completely automated here with the report publisher. So now we covered that. So options, fantastic report design with the Excel interface, awesome end-user self-service through a web portal, complete flexibility to the type of data you want, sub-ledger data, third-party data sources like we talked about Google Analytics as one of many examples, and of course GL data, and being able to combine it with budgeting and dashboards if you want to go all the way. But what about true ad hoc reporting? So let's say you don't want, or all of that is fine, what we just talked about, but you're saying, well, a fair amount of the time, I just have questions coming in, or my users have questions that me as an accountant have to answer by maybe opening Dynamics and going to a reporting tool or do an inquiry in the screen. How can I push most of those questions back to the end users? Or even as an accountant, how can I be able to answer those super quick and fast myself? So part of BI360 is the Composer. It's basically true ad hoc reporting. Think Smart List on steroids if you're running GP, or think pivot table on steroids if you do pivot tables in Excel today, but without the complexities of that. Because we already have massive live integrations to AX, GP, NAV, and SL. We're reusing that here, not for formatted reporting like we talked about earlier, but for quick ad hoc reporting. Same security, same integration, but just a window that's ideal for ad hoc. So right now I'm connected to Dynamics GP. If you look on top here, so this could have been AX, SL, or NAV. So you would see the ERP modules here on the left. We have thousands and thousands of fields linked in, so you can get to everything that's important. You can even add yourself on the back end custom fields. If you've customized, let's say, NAV or AX, you can add custom tables so they show up with friendly names. Right now I'm going to give you a quick example here. I'm going to go into the purchasing module in Dynamics, GP in this particular case. And again, I'm not in Dynamics, so I don't even need a license for Dynamics. I'm sitting on the outside hitting the SQL database of Dynamics, okay? So the friendly names that we've spent a lot of time putting on top of the Dynamics tables appear like this. So it shouldn't look too scary, you see here. And I'm looking at the payables transaction there. If I move my mouse over any of these fields, you actually can see the SQL name. Sometimes it's user-friendly, sometimes it's not, right? So if you're very curious about what the underlying database name was, you can actually see it on that pop-up. So let's see if we, in seconds, can make an accounts payable inquiry or report, or I call it an ad hoc report. So let's say we want to look at something by vendors, how much we bought from certain vendors. So we drag in vendor, open the vendor dimension. We see all of the fields inside of the vendor table in Dynamics. Grab the vendor name as well. Let's say we also want to look at the document date, so when this was created. We will look at the due date of these payables transactions, and maybe if there's a comment, so the transaction description, and we want to look at the document amount. And maybe we don't want to see everything in the system, so we want to do filter by period, so we drag period up there, and then we say we're actually only interested in the transactions that were made the first 3 months of 2014. And there we go. So that didn't take more than one hand, was just using my mouse, no typing of formulas, no knowledge of SQL table names. And yes, this is just a list, but a couple of more quick moves, you can make it much smarter. For example, let's say I want to group by the vendor name. I just drag that up. Let's say I want to group by the due date, or let's say the document date. I can drag that up. And let's say we want to add subtotals and grand totals, so we just pick that here. And now you can see that. All right? And if you don't like anything that you have there, you can just drag it down and move something else up, like you see here, like the due date. Then you can save this so that it appears on a list here. Let's see here. You can also export it to Excel, just dump it to Excel. This button here actually transfers it into our report writer in Excel, and you can add formatting, and now you just built yourself a sub-ledger report really fast. Or you can just say, I answered my question, and say, that's it, blank it out, and I'm ready to go on with my day. So with that said, we have given you more or less the grand tour of BI 360. So if you can use the question button there in WebEx, then you can put in questions that we can answer. While you're doing that, I'm going to just wrap up with a couple of summaries here in PowerPoint. So what does an implementation look like? As you heard today, BI 360 can be only a report writer. It can be very, very simple, very, very low cost. You use the Excel add-in, build your report, but it can also be deployed to lots of people through the web portal. You can automate distribution. You can use it for budgeting. You can also use it for dashboards. That is up to you, and that also affects the project if it's something very low cost and fast versus something that becomes your new true hub for management reporting and analysis. So typically you will work with your partner, or if you don't have a partner, work with Solver, and we can give you estimates on cost and what a project would look like and how we would do training and so on. So with that said, I'm going to leave the screen here on next steps and then see if Jason can see if there's any questions that have come in.
All right, so we do have several questions that have come in already, and I would just remind folks, if you do want to add any more questions, please do use the Q&A and not the chat, just to make sure that we do see it and we get to all the questions. So let's dive in here. The first question, Nils, is just asking if BI 360 is available with a Spanish translation.
Yes, that was an easy one.
Yeah. Can a report exist in multiple folders?
Yes. And I think that refers to the web portal where I was showing the different folders. And it can. The folders is just sort of a visual organization, but underneath the hood, you have the whole library of reports, and the same reports can exist several places. For example, in a department folder and an executive folder.
All right, perfect. One person wants to know about support for Dynamics 365 on-premise software.
Yes. We support all of the Dynamics products, including 365. I'm thinking because the question was 365 on-premise, that is being referred to the new version of Dynamics 365 Enterprise, which right around now, I guess, allows for on-premise install. So yes, and then you do get the added advantage that you can do live reporting still, let's say for sub-ledger data, because we have direct access to the database versus in the cloud. Of course, you, as a outside reporting tool, you have to move the data over to our cloud. So yes, for on-prem, we support that, and you have live reporting too.
I just want to, there are a couple of people asking about recordings of today's event. We did record it. We will be sharing that with all of you pretty soon. You'll get an email update on that. Question here, can emails be sent through Google email?
Yes. I'm hoping I'm saying this correct now, but any SMTP compliant email system, so that's a standard for most modern email systems, can be used for the automatic email distribution.
What version of Excel is supported? We see issues with large data sets returned in 32-bit versions.
Right, so we support 32 and 64-bit, and it supports Excel 2007 and later. Yeah, and in terms of large data sets with Excel add-ins, I mean, yes, if you get into hundreds of thousands of rows, obviously things will slow down significantly in both Excel and probably most other report writers. So we don't encourage to use the report writer as sort of a data dumping tool of, again, hundreds of thousands of rows, but you know, a 10,000 row report, for example, like a sub-ledger report should run, you know, at a very satisfactory speed in the tool. And there's all kinds of ways. Well, some people ask that question when they see an Excel add-in because they've used manual Excel where they export or all the Excel add-ins where you run all your data to Excel first and then you apply a filter afterwards. Here it works completely different. You run the report with its filters such as time and which department and so on. It queries and gets only the data it needs from, let's say, Dynamics or our data warehouse and returns only that data to Excel, which is very different than dumping all the data to Excel and then doing a filter. So it's a much more economical and better way to work with Excel and the web. Yeah.
A couple of folks are wondering whether you offer a free trial of BI360.
Yes, we do have free trial options. There's a couple of rules that applies to it, like making sure you have some sort of training, so you have the capability of having a successful trial. But short answer is yes.
All right, and I know we're at the top of the hour. Are you able to stay and answer a few more questions?
Yes.
All right, great. Can you use financial dimensions to join to another table and pull those attributes into financial reports? For example, a dimension is an item family, then join to the item family table to report by item family
Yes.
priority.
Right. Yeah. So in many cases, we've already, if it's something that a lot of people, customers use, we might already have done those joins in our metadata, in our integration. And in cases where we haven't, because it hasn't been requested much, or it's something unique or a custom table, you can, in our metadata, in our administration window, you can also create your own SQL views that does joins and appears in Excel like I was showing on the left. And in many cases, you can also do what I call a poor man's join right in Excel. If there's any related things like vendor ID, for example, you can do use Excel itself with the VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP to align things like a accounts payables report sitting next to GL transactions and doing a reconciliation, for example. So there's 3 options I just gave you for that.
Okay, can you manage security at the account or dimension level?
Yes.
All right. And what about the report or by department?
Yes, department is just another dimension, so that goes along with the first question. By report, yes. So if you're in the web portal, where typically would have a lot of end users, the folders I showed also have security, and they may see or not see certain folders, and therefore whatever reports that are in there.
All right, a pricing question. Do you have pricing for simple versus complex data warehouse scenarios?
Yes. So I would just encourage you to contact us. Do you see the email on the screen there? And then we can ask more detail about what's meant with simple versus complex and so on. But there are different price levels.
Can all users refresh report data on demand?
Yes. So if they have a license, meaning they actually have access to BI360, they can do that. That was most of my web portal exercise was really on demand. I probably never ran the report in there, but because I'd already laid out the demo for you there, but there was a run button on top of the screen, and that's exactly what happens when you hit the run button. It's on demand.
If a user enters notes on an existing report when they refresh, are the notes overwritten?
No, and that's a great question. I never showed a report example today with comment columns, but that's a very great feature we have, like monthly variance comments. You can enter right on the report, and when you save it, it saves into the database. It doesn't, just sit in the screen or in Excel. And you can bring it up later. So you can report on your comments with the report writer and compare comments across months and so on. It's a very interesting growth area that more companies are getting into now, is storing management comments and actually analyzing comments over time.
Does BI360 support multi-currency?
Yes. And you want to use the data warehouse for that. Unless you're using Dynamics to actually convert your data. But if PI360 is going to do it. The data warehouse has full-blown currency conversion with spot rates and average and closing rates and budget rates and so on.
Do users have the ability to modify data in Excel? Do they change account amounts?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question, meaning some people want that to happen, that's why they ask, and some people don't want it to happen. So you have the option for both. If you want users to be able to run their reports to Excel, for example, I didn't show that today, but running it from the web out to Excel, if you haven't protected the Excel sheet when you designed it as a power user, then they can manipulate, meaning change formulas and do analysis, as I would call it. If you don't want that to happen, then you protect the sheet, and when you run that from the portal to Excel, it's a locked down spreadsheet where they can't change anything. So you got both options.
There's a question about Power BI. How does it fit into this picture? Can it be treated as just another data source?
Yes, great question. More and more people ask about Power BI. Briefly mentioned Power BI in the session there. So the data warehouse, which might be the place you collect all kinds of valuable data and you store budget data from PI360 if you use that for budgeting. It's a very nice organized database. That's a lot easier for a tool like Power BI to use in charts and graphs compared to looking straight at the Dynamics very complex ERP databases. So yes, our database is open, and we even have a white paper on how to connect to Power BI with what's called an enterprise gateway.
All right. Someone wants to know what web browsers are supported?
Explorer is our preferred web browser, and I think there's one other one. We're using some technology in the version I showed you today that makes it support only a couple of web browsers. I never talked about our next release. Our next release is coming in a few months, next on-premise release. And that uses all HTML5, like Dynamics, the web-based versions of Dynamics does. And that means you can use any browser in a few months. Right now, it's a couple of browsers. Explorer is the best one.
And someone's asking for the process by which to activate the BI360 add-in on Excel, that they're not finding it.
So I'm not sure if that's an existing partner or customer asking, or if they're just thinking it shows up in Excel. So you would download the add-in. If you're a customer or partner, download it from our support portal, and then you just click the installation button, and it will then install itself into Excel.
All right. Well, I think we have made it through all the questions. I'll make a final call here as we begin to wrap up. We do have a survey that will pop up when you leave today. We really appreciate any feedback you can provide. It really does help us plan for the future. I'm just checking here. I don't see anything else. So, Nils, I think we are about ready to wrap up. Thank you so much for taking the time and for answering so many questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thanks to Dynamics communities and to everyone that joined today. Great talking to you. A lot of great questions. Thank you.
That concludes today's event, everyone. Have a great day.